Hello and welcome to our SQF Code Edition 9 webinar series. My name is Kathy and I'm the Marketing Specialist at SQFI, and I'm so glad to meet you all. Today we will be talking about remote audits and how this will be applied in Edition 9. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today, LeAnn Chuboff, Vice President of Technical Affairs at SQFI.
Thank you, Kathy. As Kathy said, my name is LeAnn Chuboff, Vice President of Technical Affairs at SQF, and today I'm going to talk to you about remote activities and the use of remote activities within the SQF audit. So what I will be specifically talking about is an overview of the GFSI requirements, and then how those requirements and how we built our policy at SQF, and how ICT, or the use of information communication technology, is applied during the audit process. I also want to share with you some of the feedback that we've been hearing from people that have and sites that have used the remote activity process, and share with you some of the feedback that we got from them. And then, of course, the future of remote auditing and where we're headed. So before we begin, I know there's a lot of discussion out there with Edition 9. Specifically the new changes that are going to be made. There's a lot of good benefits and features and advantages to Edition 9. We decided to release an entire edition because GFSI released their requirements in their GFSI 2020 document. So there was a couple additions that we needed to make in order to meet those requirements. But Edition 9 is focused to a specific changes, four of them that we're going to talk about. And this is one of 5 webinar series on Edition 9. The first one is just overall changes, and then there's specific webinars on food safety culture, in-house laboratory testing, the quality code, and of course this one on remote audits. Just because I'm sure you're curious, Edition 9 will be released in October, mid-October, so it will be released mid-October with implementation date of May of 2021. So let's begin on the use of ICT in the audit process. So before we begin and before we could start our policy, GFSI had to establish the requirements that all of the certification program owners had to incorporate into their code. So we had to outline and utilize these requirements. Basically, what GFSI did is follow an IAF document. So IAF stands for International Accreditation Form, and this document is MD4, which means Mandatory Document 4. And what the GFSI did is that they incorporated many of these programs and requirements within this IAF document into their requirements. Basically, what it's saying is what I think we already knew what we could do. So GFSI has stated that we can't use 100% remote audit, is that the part of the audit has to be conducted on site. So those activities include the basic implementation of the code requirements, the inspection, the verification of the HACCP program, and making sure that all of the auditable parts of the organizations are reviewed on site in person. But other activities such as interviews, records, and document checks can be used using a variety of different types of technology, just basic meeting platforms like Zoom and Teams or Adobe, as well as protected sites for sharing documents, FTP sites. Even drones can be used to look at big sites or farms, broadacre crops, etc. So a lot of different types of communication or technology can be used. It's just how they're being used. So we took those requirements, what GFSI outlined, and established our own policy. And our own remote audit policy can be viewed on our website, SQFI.com, and you could look at the different policies, and there's even links to those IEF documents that we've cited. But our policy applies to basically all different types of audits and all of our codes. The only part that it doesn't apply to is any type of unannounced audit. So an unannounced audit is one where the site or anybody on the site has no awareness when the audit will occur. And when you have to use ICT, that seemed a little bit awkward and difficult. So we just removed the fact that ICT can be used on unannounced audits. And they can be used on all other types of audits, surveillance audits, recertification audits, and even initial certification audits. And of course can be used on all of our codes. So we do reference all those IAF documents that I mentioned earlier, the MD4, as well as a Food Working Group Task Force document that specifically focuses on audit activities for accredited food safety certifications, such as SQF. So one thing that the ICT cannot apply to, and that's remote witness auditing. What the ICT requires is that the auditor be witness on their approach of using ICT, but they cannot be used. But ICT cannot be used remotely to witness an auditor conducting an audit on site. So that's really basic limitation that we have. Otherwise, it can be used during verification of closeout activities. It can be used, like I referenced earlier, interviews, document, and record checks. And our policy does not state that ICT be used prior to the on-site. In some cases, the on-site might be better to be conducted first versus waiting until afterwards. So it really, the flow, it depends on the auditor, depends on the CB, depends on the site. But what we determined is that the steps to using ICT is within the audit process itself, and it's in these 5 steps. So first, and one of the most important steps, is just determining feasibility. And that means we need to understand what the capabilities are of the site, the auditor, and the CB. And there has to be mutual agreement between all 3 parties before any ICT can be used. So the different types of technology, like I said, could be Teams and Zoom. There has to be an opportunity and a good internet connection. It could be using phone. Phone is also a means of communication technology, or FaceTime. So it really depends on the type of audit activity as well as the technology that can be used. But determining the feasibility is one of the key steps, because that will allow the certification body and the auditor to plan and schedule the audit, which is step 2. So planning and scheduling the audit is where the auditor and the CB will outline which parts will be conducted off-site and which parts will be conducted on-site, and the type of communication technology that will be used on the off-site activities. So this is another key step, because it helps the site then prepare and plan for the ICT as well as for the on-site activities. And then using ICT to collect evidence. So we've outlined in our policy specific areas that how ICT can be used. It's just including specific things. So of course, like I mentioned, you can conduct interviews, you can review records, you can look at documents, you can even look at particular sites within the facility, but there has to definitely be a process and outlined by the certification body and the auditor. And then the 4th step is actually conducting the on-site audit. As I mentioned before, that has to be conducted. What we've outlined in our policy is that our expectation is that there should be a 50-50 plan. 50% of the auditor's time can be used with ICT, and the other 50% has to be done on site. And those on-site activities include the inspection and the physical verification of the good manufacturing practices, verification that the HACCP plan has been implemented as written, and then also that all of those applicable parts of the operation is audited against the SQF code requirements. So those on-site activities, very important, but what we believe is when you use, or when the CB and the site, when they're using a remote activities, that a good portion of that can really be focused on the implementation part, and that's the valuable part when you review all the documentations ahead of time, and then the auditor can really focus on the implementation during the on-site visit. And then of course closeout of the audit, where ICT can also be used, and that's probably how we're used to using ICT, and that's the closeout of the verification of the implementation of the corrective action for all of those nonconformances. What we've been hearing, some good, bad, and ugly. So the first is that remote audits seem to take up more time, and it's harder to execute than being on site. And I get that. It's new, so we might not have all the documents available, and uploading documents could be a little bit more challenging than handing an auditor a binder. But it takes a little bit more time, maybe 15 to 20% more time, just simply to get used to the different shift in technology. But we have heard that the use of remote has helped minimize that personal contact, especially during the time of COVID, where we want to maintain and have that separation. So many of the audit activities that are conducted off-site are conducted on-site in a conference room, and we want to avoid that. So we can use remote activities to review all those documents, and we can spend more time on the site. GFSI has written a blog on mygfsi.com, and SQF has recently published a blog regarding the use of remote on-site. So you can go to SQFI.com and view that blog. We've also heard that basically having a hybrid like this isn't helpful, and that 100% remote audits are needed, especially during this time of crisis. What we're hearing is that there's some countries that have actually shut down and cannot get an auditor to them, or even in the United States, some auditors just don't want to go to certain areas of the United States. So what we need is 100% remote audits, and I can honestly say we've heard you, and we're in the process of developing that remote audit policy based on a feasibility assessment, as well as determining which sites would be eligible for 100% remote. It would be a full systems audit with a certificate, a score, and all that good stuff. However, it will not be recognized by GFSI. So it's important that before a site commits to 100% remote audit, they check with their buyer to fully understand what those buyer requirements are. So in summary, I ask that y'all be patient and that you try it out. The process will evolve. Yep, there might be a little hiccup, but definitely we're moving in the right direction. I also ask that you embrace the technology. Where were we 10 years ago when it came to internet, when it came to our smartphones? So back then we couldn't imagine where we'd be right now. So just think about where we could be 10 years from now. We have to start somewhere, and I think we're at a good place to start right now. And the other thing that's very helpful is if you share your feedback. I'd like to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly from you all to understand what kind of process we need to change, implement, or even training that we have to be conducted for our auditors, our CBs, or even our sites. So please share your feedback with us. So to learn more information, come see us at SQF Global. My C is in air quotes. I know that I'd love to see everybody at our event, but if you visit SQFglobal2020.com, you'll be able to see an agenda, and you'll be able to see all the different information that we have on Edition 9. Like I said, we have a whole session on Edition 9, and then we have multiple pull-out sessions. One is on the remote audit, because we did incorporate the remote activities in Part A, so how remote can be applied to the SQF audit. But we also have sessions on food safety culture, in-house laboratories, the quality code, commands, all that. So there's a lot of great information to be shared, and we hope that you can join us at SQF Global. So again, SQF Global 2020, I hope to see you there. We also have a lot of other information where our training is and the different types of events we have. So please visit all of these websites. Most of them, or all of them, can be on SQFI.com. You can look at all the different online training we have, our upcoming events, our training for auditors, as well as some of our training through our training centers, and many of them are virtual now, and then SQF Global. So check out SQF Global and see the agenda in the session. And with that, I will conclude. If you have any questions or you need any information, SQFI, info@sqfi.com is probably the easiest thing to remember. So info@sqfi.com. So you can email or you can give us a call if you have any questions about Edition 9, about SQF Global, or even SQF Code itself, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. And with that, I wish you the best. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for participating on our webinar series. Bye.